Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range with the vz.58. I just recently released my Bren 805 video, and a number of you guys were saying, hey, what about the vz.58? I did post a video a few years back about this rifle, but I thought it was time to do another video and discuss the vz.58. This is the rifle that the Bren 805 and 806 is replacing in Czech military service. The vz.58 was adopted in 1959 by the Czech military, and it continued on in service up until the present day, which again it's being replaced by the 805 and 806 Bren. The rifle is chambered in 7.62 by 39, or the Russian M43 equivalent. And the rifle was developed by the Czechs because they didn't want to use the AK. They wanted to develop a domestically produced rifle for their own military, but they needed to produce it under the Warsaw Pact. They needed to produce it in 7.62 by 39 versus the 7.62 by 45 that they had developed themselves in country. Now this rifle replaced the vz.52, which was an SKS type rifle. I've done a video on it in the past, and you can go back and check that out if you'd like to, and continued on military service again until the present day. Around 1984, the Czechs had produced almost 1 million of these rifles. Also, I've read that Cuba has used the rifle, as well as some Asian and African countries. This rifle was in service and was also seen in Vietnam by US soldiers. So the rifle's been around for quite some time. It's a smaller, handier rifle than the AK-47. A number of people confuse it with the AK-47 because it does look very similar outwardly, but it's not the same rifle. As a matter of fact, there's not one part on the vz.58 that's interchangeable with the AK-47. So today we're going to take a little bit closer look at the vz.58. These rifles are currently being imported by CzechPoint, and these are Czech rifles. Around 2000, Ohio Ordnance Works got their hands on some parts kits and started producing domestic copies of the vz.58, and the Czechs got involved a few years later, and also Century Arms has produced copies of the rifle. Again, let's take a closer look at this interesting military rifle from the past. The vz.58 really is a cool alternative, especially if you live north of the border in Canada. The Canadians really love the vz.58s because they're non-restricted status. They can't own AK-47s, and this is as close as they're going to get. And this isn't all that close because it has nothing to do with the AK-47 other than it uses a 7.62 by 39 cartridge. The rifles in the United States are available in a number of different models. What I'm holding right now is the tactical model. It has an adjustable telescoping stock. It does not fold. And it has a polymer pistol grip, and then polymer furniture here on the front end. Also, you'll notice that it has a threaded muzzle. This one has a 14:1 right-hand threaded muzzle, not left hand, but right hand. So finding muzzle devices can be a bit challenging. CNC Warrior does make a little thread adapter so you can put muzzle devices on it so you can suppress the rifle, which we'll do in a later video. The rifles do have a 16-inch barrel, a little over 16 inches. The original military version had a 15.5-inch or 15.4-inch barrel, so the US versions are going to have a slightly longer barrel on them just to meet US law requirements. There's a couple of different other models available. The classic model, which would have what we jokingly call the beaver barf stocks. They're kind of a wood flake type stock. They're brown. They're really kind of strange looking. They almost look like Bakelite, but they don't. But that's a classic traditional military stock. They also have the tactical model, which I have here, then the one they call the military model, which does not have the collapsible stock on it, but just has a fixed polymer stock with the black furniture like you see here. They also offer them not only in 7.62 by 39, but also in 5.56, and they offer a couple of different pistol versions, one very stumpy little guy and one with a slightly longer barrel. We try to keep these things in stock at Copper Custom. They're kind of hard to come by. CzechPoint is the importer, and as soon as they hit the market, as soon as they come in, when they get imported, they pretty much disappear. They're a very high demand item, but again, we try to keep them in stock. Now, depending on how you option the gun, it'll either come to market right around $1,000 all the way up to about $1,200, depending on what options you get. Now on this tactical, it's also interesting to note, not only do you get a threaded muzzle, so you can put different muzzle devices on it, but it also has a rail here on the side, very similar to how an AK mounts an optic. This allows you to put red dot sights and magnified optics onto the rifle, something the standard rifle doesn't afford you. What I have here is an RS Regulate mount, and it'll slide over on the side just like this, and I have a Hilux B dot on here. So it slides on just like an AK. You flip the locking lever, and now you have a red dot sight, and it works really nicely on the rifle. Now, if you run magnified optics, keep in mind you're going to have to use a short 4-power, fixed 4 or something similar, because if you get out over the ejection port, the gun's not going to run right. The gun likes to eject kind of up and to the right. All right, so you don't want to put anything over that ejection port. So you're pretty much relegated to short 4-power optics and red dot sights like this. But the rifle weighs only about 6.5 pounds, so it's a very lightweight rifle, and you can see how narrow it is. It's very short and squat, and it's just a handy little rifle. I find myself picking it up at the shop all the time and walking around with it. It just feels really, really comfortable, and the things shoot really well as well. Now, I've said this before, but they do not use standard AK magazines. They look very similar. However, they're nothing like the AK mags. They're made out of aluminum. They rock and lock just like an AK. Fixed charging handle, and let's just dump the magazine out of the gun while we can here. Set the stock to my length, and we'll just shoot it with a red dot sight. Locks open on the last shot fired. You can feel it talk to you like an AR-15. And the muzzle brake that it ships with is pretty effective. Just a great shooting little rifle. The safety lever is right here, so when it's on safe, it kills the trigger, but you can also feel it under your knuckle so you know it's on safe, and you just brush it forward to put it on fire. There's no better way to illustrate the differences between the AK and the vz.58 other than just to take them apart and show you what they look like on the inside. Here I have a Polytech, what we nicknamed a spiker because of its underfolding spike bayonet. This is a pre-band rifle. To field strip the AK, which you guys have probably seen before, you're going to drop the magazine out, make sure the chamber's empty, and now you can push the button in the rear, take the top cover off, pull your recoil spring and guide out, pull your bolt and carrier to the rear. Now here's one of the critical differences between the vz.58 and the AK. The AK uses a rotating bolt. The vz.58 does not. You rotate your bolt out. And also, you have a long stroke gas piston in the AK, and the vz.58 uses a short stroke gas piston. Now with the AK, you can rotate your lever up and take your gas tube off. Now let's set the AK aside here and field strip the vz.58. The vz.58 again looks very similar to the AK-47 outwardly, but again internally it's quite different. It does have a flapper release, so you push the flapper release mag, drop the magazine out. The magazines are not compatible with each other. The AK mag is completely different. Pull the bolt to the rear, make sure the chamber is empty. There's your chamber, and now you can field strip the gun. You will have to put the gun on fire and release the striker by pulling the trigger. Once you have the striker released, there's a little button here on the left-hand side of the receiver. You push, and a pin will pop out that goes to the right. It's captive, and it won't come out when you pull on it. It'll stay right there. Now you can push forward on the top cover with your thumb and lift up, and the top cover will come off with the 2 springs. The bottom spring, next to my index finger, is the striker spring, and the one up inside the top cover here, the longer one, is the recoil spring. The silver part sticking back is the striker assembly, so when you pull the trigger, this is what goes home. You're going to want to push that striker home again by pulling the trigger and pushing it forward. Now you can pull the bolt and carrier to the rear, and it will just lift up out of the receiver. I'm going to set the rifle aside, turn the bolt and carrier upside down. Now I'm going to pull the striker assembly back. It'll stay captive, it won't come out. And now I can lift the bolt and its locking piece out of the carrier like that. The bolt and the locking piece come apart. They just fit together like that. All right, I'm going to set those aside. And now you have another pin up here. It's just like the one in the rear. I'm going to push this pin from left to right. And now the cover for the gas system is just going to lift off like that. It's not really a gas tube, it's just a piston cover. Inside I'm going to find the short stroke gas piston. So instead of like the AK where the gas piston is attached to the carrier and it runs the full cycle when the gun fires, the gas piston on the vz.58 is short stroke, so it only goes that far rearward when it fires, and then under spring pressure it returns home. It just taps the carrier and sends it rearward. To take it out, you just pull rearward on it and then pull the spring and the piston out. All right, and you can see inside. Now, the locking mechanism is not a rotating bolt like the AK-47. It has a little drop locking piece that locks on the receiver. All right, so I'm going to put the gun back together by putting the spring on the piston, set it inside, push it rearward. That's back in place. There's just two little fingers here that ride around the gas port. Just push that down and forward. That'll hold it in place in the front. And now you just slide it down in the rear and push your cross pin across. All right, the gas system is back together. Put the bolt and carrier back together. Pick up your bolt and the locking piece and just set those two together like that, and you'll set the locking piece down inside the carrier like this. All right, and then push it forward, and you're going to keep it in the forward position when you put it back in the receiver. I'm going to hold it forward by keeping my finger on the striker assembly. Kind of point it downwards, set the bolt carrier inside the receiver, and it'll slide forward. I'm going to pull the trigger once again, push the striker home, and now I'm going to take the top cover and put the top spring and the carrier and the bottom spring into the striker. And this is one of those operations that makes you wish you had a third hand. All right, once you get them lined up, you just push forward, make sure your pin's out, and it just sets down like that. Push your pin across, and the gun's back together. The vz.58, while it feeds from a 30-round magazine, kind of has a throwback feeding mechanism. You can actually use stripper clips to charge your 30-round magazine and leave it in the rifle. You'll also notice it has sights very similar to that of the AK, and they're adjustable out to 800 meters by sliding this little slider up and down. Probably a bit optimistic, but right here's your combat setting all the way to the rear, just like the AK. On the front sight, you can adjust it for elevation and windage, so you're not going to make any adjustments to your elevation or windage outside of your preset elevation settings here. Here you're going to zero the rifle with the front sight, just like an AK. It screws up and down, and then you can drift the front sight left and right to get it zeroed. You'll notice it has a big open feeding area, so if you do get a malfunction, it's really easy to clear. Also, the ejector is right down here fixed on the receiver, so you can see where it rides on the bolt face there, and that's why the gun throws the rounds out slightly to the right but mostly upward, unlike the AK, which will throw it forward and kind of at a 132 o'clock position and forward. This rifle likes to throw them not quite straight up, just because that ejector sets off slightly, but it's on the bottom of the bolt face down there. I hope you guys enjoyed coming out today to take a look at the vz.58 made in the Czech Republic. It's one of the more unique 7.62x39 rifles available out there on the market. And if you're an AK guy, you're probably going to be interested in this rifle. It's just a beautiful handling rifle. It's a very fun rifle to shoot, and you'll find that they're pretty darn accurate. If you guys have any questions about anything you've seen this video, you can ask those questions down below. I try to stick around for the first couple of days after a video goes live to answer all the questions you guys may have. And also, if you haven't already, please swing by and check out Copper Custom. It's our online store. If you'd like to support the Military Arms channel, it's the best possible way to do so. And check out full30.com. That's full30.com. We've taken all of YouTube's best firearms content creators and brought them under one roof, and that is full30.com. Thanks again for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you guys soon.